welcome back everyone to another Blender tutorial. In this one we're going to make this exciting fire hydrant. And I get it, it's not some cool hard surface sci-fi robot mech weapon system thing, but what it is a cool little exercise in taking something boring and mundane and trying to recreate it in 3D and make it look as photoreal as possible. So it's a fun little exercise, something I really enjoy doing. Before we get into it though, I want to give a quick shout out and a big thank you to all the new subscribers. It's a new channel, so all the subscribers have really motivated me to keep making these. It helps the channel grow, so big thank you. I really do appreciate all your support. If you like the videos I'm putting out and you're not already subscribed, please consider it for all those mentioned reasons. That'd be really cool. Okay guys, so know something about this tutorial right out of the gate. This tutorial, if I had done a step-by-step for every single process, this would be a 2.5 to 3 hour video, and I just didn't want to make a video that long. So as it is, this is going to be about an hour and a half or so. So feel free to skip around and do whatever is comfortable. But what I've done is I've taken areas that are repetitive or really easy as far as operation goes, and I've either sped those up considerably or I've eliminated them completely. And I explained that during the video. And the idea here was to try to give myself more time to discuss the more complex parts of the model. So I hope it works for you. Let me know in the comments if you would rather me go back to making step-by-step detailed videos regardless of how long they would be, then that's what I'll do. But if this format works, let me know and I'll try to make them this way too. Again, still a long video at an hour and a half or so, but better than 3 hours, I think. Okay, one quick note about add-ons. So for 99% of this model, all the add-ons I'm using are built into Blender. They're free, you already have them at your disposal. I do still use add-ons that I mentioned in previous videos, like hard ops and things like that, but that's primarily to speed up a couple of things. It's not really necessary, and you can get away without using them at all to complete this model. So I will explain that in the video, but just know that you're not by any way, shape, or form required to have third-party paid add-ons to finish the model. So it should be good. Let's jump into Blender and get this thing started. All right, guys, here we are in Blender, and we are about to get started on our fire hydrant. So looking at my reference photos, the first thing I want to attack is the bottom and the top of the fire hydrant have this kind of like indented or dimpled, I don't know what you want to call it, cylindrical pieces. The top one looks kind of like a bell, but it's got these kind of pill-looking indentations in it. So that's what I want to hit first. So I'm going to go into front view, orthographic, and then start by just adding a plane. Shift-A, add a plane. Switch to, view for your align. And then let's scale it in on X a little bit. Oops, nope, I meant scale on X. And I'm going to hold down Control just to snap to the vertices. And I'm going to try to find something that I think works for this. I'm kind of thinking, I'm kind of torn. This might be a little thin. That might be a little fat. Let's try this one. Okay, go ahead. Set your scale, and then let's go into edit mode. First thing I want to do is I want to add 3 loop cuts here. So Control R and then scroll. I want to add 3. Now the reason I want to add 3 is because it's going to create 5 vertices across the top and bottom. And once this becomes a cylinder, it's going to make a 32 segment cylinder. Trust me on this. I've done the math. So we're going to add another loop right in the middle. Control R. Oops. Control R, make sure that's in the middle, and then we're going to bevel this one. So Control B. We're going to bring these edges fairly close to the top and bottom. This is where the top and bottom of the dimple is going to be, and I'm calling it that because I don't know what else you'd call it. Feel free to comment below and let me know if those actually have a name. All right, so grab these vertices here, grab these vertices here, and let's scale them on Z to get this kind of a thing going on. From here, grab the center faces and let's do an I for inset. Inset this a little bit, give it a little bit of depth. Something like that probably works. Shift R to repeat that exact process to get a nice even repeat there. And then if I go back into my object mode and I add a sub D with Control 2, right? We're getting there. I'm going to shade smooth. Now we can see that we don't want these rounded edges. So to fix that, we're just going to simply add 3 more loop cuts in the center, like so. You can see that, sharpen that up. At least it straightened the edge out, I should say. Now to sharpen this up, as it is in our reference photos, or my reference photos anyway, I'm going to add a loop right in between these 2 edges and just bring this to where it works for me. And then there we go. There is the dimple, right? So the rest of this part is actually fairly simple. I'm going to save my work. I'm going to add, we already have our Subdivision Modifier here. I'm going to add an array. Now on my reference photos, there's 8 of these going around the hydrant. So I'm going to change my count to 8. I'm going to make sure that merge is selected and first and last copies. I always do this just for good measure, but you can still, see that these things aren't merged, and that's just because the stack's in the wrong order. So we want to make sure that our subdivision modifier is at the bottom of the stack always. And that solves that. Okay, so now we're almost there. Let's Shift A. We're going to add a curve circle. Okay, we're going to go back into our dimpled plane, and we're going to add another modifier. We're going to add a curve modifier, and we're going to select our new curve circle. And you can see it kind of made something. It's not what we want. It's because it's inverted. So we're going to select our circle, go into edit mode, go into segments, switch direction. Okay, now it's looking right, but it's the wrong size. So while this is still selected, just hit S to scale it, and we're going to scale it now. Now this is important. You're scaling the curve, not the plane. Okay, so make sure that you're on the curve when you're doing the scaling. I'm just going to activate Wireframe here really quick. You can do that by just going into, if you don't have hard ops, just go into your viewport overlays and just make sure Wireframe's turned on. And I do this so when I scale the curve now, I can see where these 2 edges line up. And I'm really ADHD about this, so I tend to want these to line up as close to dead on perfect as I can get them. Sometimes I always can't do it, and I don't want to take a lot of time here, so just get them as close as you can. Okay, now tab out of there, tap back into your dimpled plane. We're going to add 1 more modifier to this right now. We're going to add a Weld Modifier. Okay, and just like before, make sure your subdivision mod is on the bottom of the stack. And there we go. So it should go array, curve, weld, subdivision. And if I turn off my wireframe here, you can see, here we go. There's the base, or part of the base of our fire hydrant. Right? And you can see if I turn off the modifiers, this is what we've done. Right? Now, the cool thing about this is that it's completely non-destructive. So if I need to go in here and make an edit, so let's say this dimple is the wrong size or the wrong width, I can just change that single plane and it'll automatically update through here. So this is a really cool way to work. Now, for the top of the fire hydrant, it's exactly the same thing. It just has a bit of a bell shape to it. So we'll take our existing piece, we'll Shift D, move that up on Z to something that looks like a good height. And then I'll just leave it there. And to get that bell shape, we're going to add a modifier to this piece. And we're going to add a simple deform. We're going to make it a bend. And it's going to look funky. It's not right. For this one, we want the deform to be at the very top of the stack. Okay, and then it looks worse. The reason it looked worse is because we have to set the rotation and scale. So we'll just Control A, apply rotation and scale, and then there we go. All right. But it still doesn't look like a bell, and that's because the modifier is bending at the origin point, so right in the center. So a quick way to address that is I'm just going to grab the move little tool here, and I can see this little gizmo, and then I'm just going to go up to options here in the upper right, affect origins, and you can see it brings up this axis display. I'm just going to grab this Z axis, I'm going to drag it down, and you can see what's happening. It's changing the position of the bend. And I'm going to try to get this as close to the exact bottom as I can. And then there we go. Now, to make sure I don't screw anything else up, go back into options and turn off origins. Okay. That's just one way of moving your origin point. There's others, but that's, I find, pretty quick in this particular exercise. So, okay, so now it's getting there, but I find that playing around with this and looking at my photos, an angle of 60 degrees tends to work the best. So I'm going to increase that angle to 60. And then there we go. There's the most of the bottom part of our fire hydrant and the top part. Right? The first hard part is now out of the way. Now, to create the center column here, I'm just going to take this bottom piece, Shift-D, move it up. Now, I don't care about this piece. All I want is this top edge. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply the array, the curve, the weld, and just get rid of the subdivision. Okay, all I want is this edge loop right there. So once I've got that selected, P, separate by selection, okay, and then I can tab back into this object here, and I can just get rid of it. Don't need that. This is what I want here. So I'll start by just setting the origin back to geometry, go into edit mode, make sure this is selected and fill it. Okay. Now I'm just going to extrude this on the Z fairly close there, and then I'm going to move this face up on Z to about there. Okay. Now to get these to snap, there's a couple things that, I have kind of realized, and this might just be isolated to my use case, but I found that snapping works best if subdivision isn't turned on, and I don't know why. Maybe it's this version of Blender, maybe it's just my setup. I'm just going to turn that off for a second. Go back into this centerpiece. I'm going to grab this face. I'm going to make sure that my snap to is set to edge, okay, but I'm not going to turn on the magnet. And I'm just going to G, Z, and hold Control right on that edge and snap it there. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. Grab that face, G, Z, snap it there, right? So now I know that those things are snapped to those edges. And if I look at it from here, everything looks like it's good to go. Now, I wouldn't connect these yet. And the reason for that is if I decide at some point that this isn't tall enough, or it isn't, short enough, or it's whatever the case may be, I can just move these things around independently and I can make these changes. Also, when we go into the next step, it's just going to be a little bit easier to make these, to edit the center column when it's its own piece and not have to worry about the top and bottom. So I'm going to leave those alone. If I were to activate my wireframe again, we can take note that all of our edges line up. All right, and that's what we want. That's why we copied that edge loop there. All right, so we're good to go. This section is now complete. The next section, we're going to add the ports, the front. In my case here, I have a front port on my image and then a left and a right. And we're going to do those by way of Booleans, and then we're going to clean them up. So that's going to be the next part of this tutorial, but this part's done and we are on our way. And don't worry about adding the sub-Ds back here yet. We're going to turn those on later. All right, guys, so let's jump over to part 2 and get the next part done. All right, guys, welcome to part 2. So in the last part, we created our basic sections, this part of the bottom, this bell at the top, and our center column. Now we need to add the ports to this. So looking at my image, I can see that the front port is pretty much the same diameter as the center column. And then the ones on the left and right are smaller. So for this, we can just go ahead and hide these. We don't need those right now. We're just going to work with our centerpiece here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my side view, and I'm going to Shift-D to duplicate this, snap it back, and then I'm going to rotate it on X 90 degrees. So we get this. I'll move it forward. Doesn't need to be this long, of course. I'm going to scale it on Y. Something about there. Move it into place. It's probably not, yeah, let's make it a little bit longer on Y and then just kind of move it, right? So what I want to do is just place this where I want it to be. And there's a couple things I want to look at. If I turn on my wireframe, this is what I want, right? See how these perpendicular edges connect? Right? That's what you want. You want to be careful that this doesn't protrude out the back like this. See that? You don't want that. So just get this as close to that edge, as you can, so it doesn't come out the back end there. It probably wouldn't matter because we're going to Boolean this a couple times, but I like to keep it as clean as I possibly can. You want these edges to intersect. Okay, so there is that port. Now for the smaller ports on the side, we're going to do a couple things. So these are 32 section cylinders, and we know that looking at the side here, with a smaller cylinder, we're not going to have 32 edges to connect to. So for that, we're going to choose a smaller segmented cylinder. So let's grab mesh, cylinder, and I think I'm just going to try 16. on this. We'll just try half, and I'm going to rotate this on Y, and then I'm just going to bring it up to where I think it should go here, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of width on X, bring it out like so. Now from here, there's several ways you can assure that this is aligned properly. I'm just going to eyeball it here. That's not really that important to me. As long as it's eyeballed and it looks like it's lined up, then I'm good with that. What is important to me is noting where these vertices are. So if I switch into vertex mode, you can see, right? This is what I'm noting here. What I want here is I want to create a place where these two vertices on the right-hand side here, these two, connect, or as closely as I can connect, to one of these perpendicular lines that is coming down the center column, right? But I also need to make sure that this is kind of fits our reference photo with regards to size. So you can see if I size this up, and I can get those, see how those two vertices now right here, this one and this one are now looking like they're connecting here. How does it look overall? So it's not bad. It might be a little bit big. Yeah, I think it's a little bit big. On my reference photo, these side ports are smaller. So I'll scale it down to the next vertical edge right there. So again, this is what I'm looking at, this and this, okay? I want these to be as close as I can get them to lining up on that edge. You'll see why in a little bit, right? And that looks better. That looks a little bit closer to my reference photo, right? And you can see we're going to have misalignment issues all over the place, but that's okay. We're going to address those, right? And there we go. So before I do any Booleaning here, I just like to make a couple of adjustments just so I kind of feel better about how this is all looking. So I'm going to grab this face. It's a little bit too far out there. I'm just going to bring it in. It's still snapping to edge. I'm just going to bring it in something about like there. And I try to take a note. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 5 squares in between those, so 5 grid lines. And then I'll kind of do the same thing here. So grab this face. Let's go to my front view. Oops. And just move this out. Something like that. And then to make sure that this is uniform or symmetrized, again, I'm using machine tools. So just an Alt-X and just mirror it to that side. All right. So that looks pretty good. Now, when I mirrored it, it added an unnecessary loop that I don't want there. So I'm just going to take this out. Let's go back. All right, so here is where we're at. Now, I'm going to bring in the top and bottom piece because now I want to see if this is proportionately correct. I can see in my reference photo that the space between the bottom of this port and the start of this section is a little bit more than the space here to there. So I'm just going to grab these two and I'm going to move them up a little bit. Not too much because they're going to have this extruded part here. Just a little bit, just so it's a little bit asymmetrical from top to bottom. And that works for me. Okay. We can also take a minute to stand back and look, how is this looking proportionally? And if it's not matching your reference photo, now's the time to start making some changes before anything is, becomes more complex or committed, right? It's kind of like a block out with some detail. But I am good with this. So I'm just going to hide those other two parts and I'm going to start working here. Okay. So before I do anything crazy, just make sure I save my work. Now I've already done this, but if you guys want, I recommend taking all your objects, shifting, and then moving them to a backup folder, just in case something catastrophic happens and you need to start over. You can at least start from this point. You don't have to make all these again, right? I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. So let's get started here with our Booleaning. Okay, guys, so here we go. We've positioned everything where we want it, and we're ready to start our Booleans. So if you're using the free add-on for Blender, Bool Tool, it works the same way. I'm using HardOps, but all we want to do is want to take this piece here, and we want to create a union. So I'm just going to hit Control+ on the numpad, and there it is. And then I don't need this piece anymore, and I've already backed it up, so I could delete it. I'm just going to move it to a folder I have called Cutters already, so it's out of the way, right? And I'm going to do the same thing here. Grab this, same thing, move that out of the way. Okay. So here we go. Now, if I look at my modifier stack, I can see here are my two Booleans. I want to apply these. Okay. Now, if I look at this in Wireframe, everything looks good. There's no weird hidden faces or overlap. Okay. But if I go into vertex mode, it's a bit of a nightmare. And this is to be expected, right? This is what happens when we Boolean things, but that's okay. First thing I want to check is these points here, and I can see, I'm just going to switch this here. Come on. Just by giving these a quick little move, that these have all been joined. Oh, that one hasn't. Okay, so when you find something like this, first thing we can do, easy thing is A, M, merge by distance. And you can see it removed 8 vertices just from that alone. All right, so that should have addressed these. Okay, cool. So these are all connected. That's probably going to be good all the way around. So now we have to address these. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can go about this. What I like to do is favor the main center column. That to me is the more important part. So I'm just going to take these vertices on the inside and I'm going to connect them to the vertices on the center column. And you could do this by selecting the first and the last and then M merge at last. I'm using a key command to do this, but that's all I'm doing is just merging one to the other. And we'll get to these center ones in a second. Let's worry about these. Again, favoring the main column. Okay, and I know it's going to look kind of funky through here, and that's just to be expected because of the spread here. Don't worry. Now for here, we have a couple of different things we can do. Because these technically, neither one of these is the center column. For this, you can maybe just select them both and just merge at center and just Shift R to repeat that. Okay, so it just kind of creates an average of both of them. And then for this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And I couldn't really tell you a right or wrong way. I try to favor the center column. So if I was doing that, then I would take this point, merge it there, and then I have to do the same thing here to create that kind of thing, right? And we can address this a little bit. So that and that. Now, if I were to take this vertex here and double G that and move it, right? You can see what it does. See how it's going to disrupt this cylinder here. So we don't want to do that. We're just going to leave that alone. I could take this one, double G that, and just move that down a little bit. That might be a better solution just to create a little bit more evenness through here. Okay. And then before I do anything else, I don't want to have to repeat myself on the other side. So again, you want to symmetrize from one side to the other. And again, I'm using machine tools. So Alt X, and then there it is, right? And don't worry about these edges here. We're going to do this a whole bunch of times and then we'll remove these. So if I were to add a Subdivision Modifier to this now, right? No surprise, this is what it looks like, right? But that's okay. I just do that just as kind of like a gauge. We're going to go back into edit mode. Let's start cleaning this up. So let's start by connecting these two verts here. Okay. And you can see here, we're going to have an end gone here, and that's okay. We're going to address those. Okay. We still have our outer circle here, and everything looks good. See, that's a little bit fixed there. All this is funky at the top. Now, one of the things we can do right out of the gate, because we're not going to be Booleaning, I guess that's a word, these anymore, is we can go ahead and just remove these faces here and remove these faces here. We don't need these anymore. And if I turn on my subd, this is what we're getting now, right? So it's starting to take shape the way we want. Okay. Now, another thing I can do here, for now, I'll just remove this edge. If we just want to get a better visual, we can just add an inset here. Now, you can see it's kind of taking a little bit better shape. Now, I'm going to turn my wireframe off, and we can see if I shade this smooth, okay, all kinds of funkiness going on here. But that's, again, to be expected. Let me also go ahead and make sure I don't have any. Okay, got all these are connected. Okay, cool. Okay. Make sure that's, yeah. Okay. Now, let's start addressing this weirdness in here. So what I want to do here is I want to select this edge. Oops. Come on. All the way around. And by doing this, this is going to basically serve two purposes. On one hand, it's going to allow us to blend these pieces together. On the other hand, it's going to show us if we have any duplicate verts or errors. So once I've got all these edges selected, I'm going to bevel these. And here we go. So you see all this mess in here, right? That's because we have duplicate verts that weren't merged. So let's undo this. Let's go back in here and try to find where these things are. Okay, they're here, just don't know where they are. Or there's something else going on. So let's look at this in Wireframe and let's see. So nothing's jumping out at me yet. I have a feeling there's something I'm not seeing. So let's do another all merge by distance. And I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay. There's probably some extra verts in there. Let's do this again. So let's select this edge now. Anytime you're unsure about duplicate verts and things, run a bevel on an edge. That'll tell you instantly. Okay, so again, select all these like so. Okay, and then again, bevel. There we go. Much better. I want this to be a 2-segment bevel. So I'm just going to, oh, that's not 2 segments. There it is. Okay, so 2-segment bevel. And this, I want it to be fairly wide, but not grotesque. Something kind of like this, I think works. Okay, now if I tab out of this, you can see it's already improved. Our blend here is improving. It's starting to look much better. Let's go in and kind of just clean up the last little bits here. So this happened here because of a duplicate vert. So something else I missed. There it is right there. So the way we fix this is, what I like to do is just double G, get it off there, select this, and then merge it to last again. I bet it happened down here too. Yep, it did. We're just going to double G that, select that, merge to last. And then just like before, symmetrize that to the other side. And if you want, you can just get rid of this edge. Okay, so once again, here we are. And that's why I said, like, sometimes it's, no matter what you do, it's really hard to notice those double verts. And you can start adding, weld modifiers and things, and that just gets a lot more involved. This actually works fairly quick. So 2-segment bevel right about here. Give it a quick look. Yeah, okay, that's looking better, and there's no weirdness. Okay, so you can see, looking pretty good. Now let's just clean up the last little bit here. So we have an end gun here, which we want to just address by just connecting these 2 verts here. And then same thing with here. Okay, so now it's all quads. Now you can see here, I'm going to switch to switch to this mat cap. And there's a little bit of a pinch right here. Okay. What's happening is it's a little cramped. So sometimes I'll just take this vertex here and just move it in a little bit. And we're going to do some other stuff here in a second, but just to give it a little bit of space around there. See, that's already improved that. Now, if I look in really close here, it's hard to see, and it might not show well on the video, but there's a little bit of disturbance happening here. And the way I like to address that is just by taking this quad here, it looks like a triangle, it's a quad, and just moving it up a level, right? So it's not right in the crotch of these 2 ports. So the way I do that is just adding an edge loop right about there. Same thing with the bottom. Right about there. And we're just going to move this up. So go into vertex mode. I'm going to select this, then this, and hit J to merge those. And essentially creates the same shape. I'll remove these edges here, slide this vertex over just a little bit, kind of create that same shape. And then connect these 2 vertices and then get rid of this edge. Right? So you see it's the exact same shape. Now it's been moved up a level. Right? We'll do the same thing with the bottom. So here, 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 J, get rid of this edge, get rid of this edge, give this vertex a little space. Okay, connect these 2 verts and get rid of this edge. Same thing, right? So now if I tab into my object mode, you can see it's not as bunched up here. Right? We still have a few little things going on through here, and that's primarily because of how these pieces are connected. And we could try to work them a little bit and try to smooth them out. I'm not even sure if it's that necessary. And I say that because these are man-made objects, right? Like anything else in our daily life. So once this is textured and it's got bump and height maps and displacement maps and all these things on it, you're not even going to notice these, slight discrepancies in here. They're not even going to show up. And even if they did, that just adds to the realism, because otherwise it would look too perfect and too artificial. If I switch the matte cap again, we can see there's nothing jumping out with regards to like bad shading. Right? I mean, don't pay attention to this. That we're not going to stay with that. Right? But that's it. Right? That's how we go from using Booleans to sub-Ds, right, in our model. That's how we can clean it up. Now, later on, I'll add, loops here, and I'll try to make the geometry as even as I can. We'll work on these caps. But for now, that's just how I would go about adding the ports by way of Booleans and then cleaning them up back into quads so it subdivides nicely. All right, guys, that's it for this section. In the next section, we're going to start connecting the tops, bottoms. We're going to start doing the extruded parts where the parts are bolted together, and we'll keep going. Once we've done our Boolean here, and we're happy with this, and this is looking the way we want it, let's go ahead and connect these three sections together. So I'm going to turn off Wireframe here, and just temporarily, I'm just going to turn off the sub-D here. I'm going to focus on these for a second. Now, if I leave the sub-D on, and I take these pieces, and I merge these together with a Control-J, right, you can see our model breaks. And that's because we have to commit these modifiers first. So just starting with the top, we want to commit the deform, the array, the curve, the weld, and I'm going to completely remove, the subdivision modifier. Do the same thing with the bottom, array, curve, weld, remove the subdivision. Now, like I've always said, and I will always say, before you do any of that, if you don't already have backups of those pieces, make backups of those pieces. So just in case you want to come back, you don't have to start that all over. In my case, I've already done it, so that's why I'm committing them. All right, so here we go. So now you can see there's no modifiers for these, but there is a subdivision modifier on this. So if I take the top, bottom, and then the center as the last object selected, hit Control-J, all three pieces are now one object, and they're all using the same subdivision modifier, which is what I want. There's a line here, and you probably can't see it, but there's a line there too. And that's where those edges overlapped each other. So the way we fix that is just go into edit mode, all M, merge by distance, and 64 verts were removed. And that makes sense because there's 32 on the top, 32 on the bottom. And then there we go. Right. So now these parts have been joined. Everything's clean. If I switch to wireframe, it's looking pretty good. And again, don't worry about edges in here. We're going to work on those in a little while, but there it is. Right, everything's connected. It's all quads, subdivides nicely, and we're on our way. Okay, so in the next step, we're going to start doing these extruded parts where the top in this section bolt in, and there's a little bit of detail in here, and we'll start kind of wrapping this up. The rest of this, until we get to these end little wrench ports here, is fairly simple and straightforward. So let's jump into step 3, get those extrusions done. Hope you guys are having fun. See you over there. All right, guys, welcome to step 3. In this step, we're going to build on our model, everything that we did previously, and we're going to add these extruded parts. And this is where the top of the fire hydrant bolts to the center and the bottom of the fire hydrant bolts to the center. Right? So we're going to work on those now. They're going to be part of this. So the way we're going to do this, we'll go into side view, make sure we're in orthographic, go into edit mode. And there's a couple things that we want to do here. So what you're seeing here is just from a previous version where I explained this. So let me just quickly remove these edges. We'll put them back in later. Don't stress. Okay, so this is what you probably are starting with from the previous step. Okay, so looking at my reference photo, I can see that this section here is probably comes down to about here. So what I want to do is add a loop cut, but I want this to be even. And then I'm just going to use my little dialog here to kind of just move this somewhere about there. Looks pretty good. Okay. And then go ahead and just commit that. Holding down Alt, select those faces, and then Alt E, extrude faces along normals. We're going to bring that out. Now, before I commit this, I'm going to look at it from the side. I want this, it looks like in my photo anyway, that this edge kind of lines up with this edge. So I'm just going to move this in somewhere about there. All right, give it a quick look. Okay, that looks good. Go ahead and, right, looks good. Now, if I were to turn on subds again, it's going to look like this, right? Which obviously is not what we want. That's okay. In the edit mode, from here on out, it's literally just adding bevels and extrusions. That's it. Edge loops, bevels, extrusions, repeated, repeated, repeated. So I'm going to do the first one, and then I'm going to speed it up a little bit. So I'm going to run an edge loop right through the middle here, and then I'm going to bevel this. There's something about this, and I only need it to be a one segment bevel. Something, looking at my reference photo, is about there. Okay. And then take these faces, same thing, extrude them out, something about there, I think works. Okay. And then to get this kind of rounded a little bit, I'm going to, holding down Alt, select this edge, Alt and Shift, select this edge, and then I'm going to bevel this. Now this is going to be a 2-segment bevel again. Okay, and I'm just going to bring it to where somewhere like here. I'm going to make sure that clamp is turned on. Clamp overlap. Okay. And you can see that with clamp overlap turned on, these edges, I didn't extrude this enough to where these would connect, and that's no big deal. Okay, as long as we have a 2-segment bevel here, we got this edge in the middle, we're good. Okay, go ahead and just commit that. Now the way I'm going to fix this is I don't need both these edges. So I'm going to Alt click this one, and I'm just going to Control X to get rid of it. And you can see this is a little bit uneven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Alt Control this edge, Alt Control this edge. All right, Alt Control Shift the second one, and that's going to select all the vertical edges all the way around this. And then I'm going to use Loop Tools, which is again a free add-on. You guys should be using that by now, and just click on Space. And what that did is it spaced these evenly to where it brought this edge right back to the center. And that's exactly what I want. Okay. Now from here, if you guys haven't already guessed it, it's just a matter of just applying bevels. But I can see a problem already. There's a duplicate edge here. And I'm not quite sure why that happened. Let's see if that took care of it. Maybe it didn't. Let's double check. I don't think it did. Yeah, so there's still a duplicate edge here. Again, not sure why this happened. This doesn't always happen, but something happened when I did that bevel, and it added an edge. So let me quickly just address that. So let me just double check the rest of my mesh here. Just when you do that merge by distance, you got to be careful because it can actually merge things you don't want it to merge. But I think in this case, we're okay. Okay, so that should have fixed that. Okay, so now we're just going to select edges and we're going to bevel them. And I do this manually versus a modifier because I bevel at different heights or different, bevel sizes. So this one is a little bit thicker, or I should say wider, right? So I get more of this kind of a sweep. But then these bevels here are actually really tight. So I grab this one here, grab this one there. I want these to be tighter than that one. So somewhere around here is probably going to work well. And I always double check. Yeah, that looks right. Okay. And then here and here are the tightest. So these are going to be really small. Right. And then lastly, under here, we don't even really see, so it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to give it a relatively tight bevel here, like so. Okay. And that's it. That's all straightforward stuff that you guys do all the time. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the bottom here, down here, and then that part will be sped up. But before we jump into that, in my reference photo, there's a bit of a detail here that's not in all of them, but it's on this one. So I'm going to show you how I went about doing it. There's this bottom section scales out a little bit, and there's kind of a step process here. So what it looks like is dropping a loop here. And the same thing, we want this to be even. Flip it if it's not already, and it's about, yeah, probably about yay big or so. All right. And then we're going to grab those faces. We're going to extrude these out the same way we did before. Real little bit, though. This is not very big. Something like that probably works fine. And just like before, grab this edge, bevel these. Okay. And don't worry about the fact that they don't connect. That's actually okay because of the way this piece looks. It actually looks like this. It's not completely rounded. Okay. Now, it happened again, and I got to investigate this, why this is doing this when I do these extrusions. That hasn't happened before, at least in previous versions of Blender. I don't know why those edges are being duplicated, but again, merge by distance. And it removed way too many verts that time, so I know that this is, we want 64. And before I commit this, I'm just going to double check, make sure everything else still looks right. Okay, cool. That's committed. Okay, that's what we want. And before I sharpen these edges up, I want to add an edge here. And we're going to add an edge here, and then we're going to add another edge just above that one. You'll see why in a moment here. Okay. And before I tighten these up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into vertex mode, Alt-Z to go into X-ray. I'm going to grab all the verts between those two edges there. And then I'm going to scale this on everything but the Z axis. So S, Shift Z, and I'm going to bring this out just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to go through here and I'm going to tighten these up. So I'm going to speed this up. It's exactly the same thing, just adding some 2-segment bevels. Okay, and this is what I get. Right, I get this little kind of flared out detail. That's on at least the reference photo that I'm using. It's not on every fire hydrant, of course, but the one that I'm looking at right now, it does that. Okay, so let's move on to the bottom extrusion, and we're moving through this thing. Okay, so for the bottom extrusion, it's just like this. It's got a slight variation in design, but it's relatively the same thing. It is slightly bigger. So the way I'm going to attack this is just go into edge mode, grab this edge, and I'm just going to E for extrude and just Z, get it down to about what I think is going to be the appropriate size for that. So something maybe about here. That's right. Select all the faces. Same thing, Alt-E, bring these out. Now for this time, I'm going to, before I commit it, I'm going to switch to top. And this one is slightly larger. So I'm just going to eyeball this. Maybe something like that. Seems reasonable. Cool. Go ahead and commit that. And just like before, I'm going to speed this up, but it's exactly like the top. We're just going to run edge loops and extrusions. All right, guys. So those extrusions are done. And as you can see, all I did was, just like before, edge loop, bevel, extrude, edge loop, bevel, extrude. It just rinse and repeat. This one has a slightly different design in that it has a slight extrusion here before the rounded one here, right? But otherwise, it's the exact same process. Okay, grab these, bevel these. We wanted this to be a 2-segment bevel. And that works. This one is a little bit more rounded, so we're going to do the same trick as before. So we'll just grab this edge here. There it goes. And then get rid of this. Then grab all these and just loop tools, space to bring that edge to the center. And there we go. Now I'll speed the next part up because you already know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to bevel all these edges to tighten them up. All right, and we're back. So there we go. You can see just like the top one, a slight difference in design. And now that I look at it, this one's a little bit too, sticky outy for me. So what I want to do is go in here. I want to select this edge. Oops, select this edge. switch to vertex mode. Now, I'm going to put this in X-ray so you can see. I'm going to hit Shift S and 2 on the numpad. And that's going to move the cursor, the 3D cursor, right to the center of this loop. Okay. Then I'm going to hit P, and I'm going to move my my point to the 3D cursor. Now, I'm just going to scale in just with S. It's scaling into the cursor. Okay. And then there we go. So it's not as bulgy or as rounded as before. I may even want to take the top ones too. So I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to scale them on everything but Z. Bring the whole thing in just a little bit, like so. Yeah, that's more what I want. Okay. I think I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom one here. Grab this one, Shift S2. It's already set to the right mode of, and I'm going to scale it in just a little bit. Double check it. Yeah, okay. That's what I want. All right. Now, don't forget just to bring in the base, which you're not really going to see. This part's kind of in the ground, but just bring that down a little bit. F to fill it. And then let's just inset, Shift R once or twice, and then let's just poke these faces. Okay, and then turn this into quads. We're just going to select every other edge, and I'm going to speed this up. Okay, now just get rid of those edges. Now we have quads. Okay, lastly, grab this bottom edge, give it a bevel. Actually, don't even need to. Let's just grab a loop here, just a single loop down there, just to sharpen that edge. This is going to be in the ground. I'm not going to see it. You could even probably just get rid of the whole bottom set of faces if you want. Throw a bevel here. In other words, if you didn't need your mesh to be, watertight, you didn't care, you can just literally just go in, select these, and just get rid of them. This is part of the model you would never see. It goes in the ground. I'm going to leave it there for now, though. Right, like so. So that's the extrusion part of this, right? So not hard. Just again, same thing. Edge loop, bevel, extrude, edge loop, bevel, extrude over and over and over again, and then we get these shapes. In the next part, we're going to have to deal with these caps. Now, instead of going through and just taking the time, you guys know how to do this, right? You're just going to take these edges, these faces, I for extrude, I for inset, E for extrude, and you're just going to basically make the shape that that is this cap. Make sure you switch back to median point though for your scaling, and then this whole thing, right? Like you guys, I don't have to show you how to do that. That's relatively simple. So in the next part, we're going to work on Booleaning the little wrench parts to those caps. Okay, so you should be here, practice this, and then build your caps. And a little tip, build the front one, then build the side one, and then symmetrize the other side, and then you'll be good to go. All right, guys, let's jump into step 4 and finish off the details on those caps that you're going to have done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is step 4. So what I mentioned in the last step were these caps, right? And you can see here, there's nothing complex about this. It's literally just, inset, extrude, scale. It's literally those things. It's inset, extrude, scale, repeat over and over again until you get this shape. So that's why I didn't go into all the time and how to do this, because that should be pretty straightforward. Okay. What I am going to do is talk about how we get these little wrench parts on the end here. I'm not sure what you call them, but it's what firefighters would use to open these up. And we're going to use Booleans for that again, right? And same thing on the top. So on the top, really, it's a quick note. All I did here, let's hide this for a second. All I did here, same thing. I took that top part, closed it, extruded it, and then did a series of extrusion, scale, extrusion, scale, extrusion, scale, and until I got that rounded, and then closed it. That's, again, super simple. Nothing really, serious going on there. All right, so let's jump out of wireframe here. and let's work on these parts. So I'm going to unhide these. All I did is I added a 5-section cylinder and just duplicated it and placed it in the center of all of these. Up top, I added an additional 5-section cylinder because in my reference photo, at the top of the fire hydrant, it has this extra little bit, and we're going to put that in here where it looks like it's threaded, like kind of a regular cylindrical looking part that's threaded on top of this, in between this. This is actually part of that. So we're going to do that separately, right? And I'll show you that. So for this, we're going to use Booleans to attach these, and then we're going to clean them up and make everything quads again, just like we did with this, right? Slightly different flow, but it's the same idea, right? So, and we're only going to do one side, obviously. So let's just start with this, with these here. I'm not going to worry about this one just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn off the sub-D, and I'm going to turn on wireframe just so I can see what's going on. Make sure that, just like with any Boolean, that there's, your objects are intersecting, right? And I'm going to start here, grab that, just like before, Control P, okay? And then same thing here, Control P, sorry, Control plus, okay? Now, if I select this, all right, I can see my 2 Booleans here. If I were to move this down, turn this back on, we can see, obviously that's to be expected. It looks funky there. So let's just go ahead and just turn off the Booleans. We don't need them. Sorry, not the Booleans, the sub-D. We don't need those. Let's go ahead and address this. So right out of the gate, let's apply the Booleans. Let's work on this side first. The obvious thing is to connect the corners, or the obvious verts that aren't connected already. So we're just going to connect these. The goal here is to create quads. So we see an edge that doesn't look right, just replace it with the edge that does. Okay. So we've connected those. Now we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 verts that are unaccounted for right now. We have to connect those up through here. So an easy way to do this is select these 2 edges like so, and subdivide, and we're just going to enter 2 in our number of cuts. Okay. And you can see what that did here. Now I can just connect this to this and this to this. That makes sense. I'll do it one more time, and then I'm going to speed up the other one. Select these 2 edges, open up your contextual menu, which I believe is just left click, subdivide, number of cuts, 2. Okay, and then just connect those, connect those. These remaining 3, I'm going to speed up. Okay, so I hope you guys caught it. On the bottom one, there were 3. So if you caught that, congratulations, because I didn't mention it before. Okay, so from here, if I were to turn this back on, turn my sub-D back on, you can see it's starting to shape up a little bit. If we turn on wireframe, we have an idea of what's going on here. These wrench parts, again, I don't know the name of these, so if somebody wants to comment what they're actually called, that'd be great. I guess we can call it like a bolt or a wrench thing, whatever. Well, these have to be sharp cornered, right? So the way we can do that is just by literally borrowing edges. Now, because these edges here are not structural edges, we can move them. We can borrow them, we can put them in other places, and it's not going to disrupt, at least not negatively, our model. So I can literally take this edge here and double G and just slide it over like so. Do the same thing with here. Okay. It's hard to tell, but that edge is sharpening up. Okay. Now I'm just going to do this for the rest of them. I'm going to speed this up. Okay. So now that we've done that, you can see we've moved all these edges over, right? It still looks like crap, but that's because we haven't addressed this, big n-gon right here, and the sub-D, of course, doesn't like that. So we were going to address this, select this face, we're going to inset it once to be about, there, and inset it again, and then it's going to cause a problem with these overlapping verts, and that's okay. We're going to go into vertex mode. We're going to select these 3 verts, but in fact, we're missing one. Where's the other one? There's a vert missing somewhere. Let's find it. There it is. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to grab these and just merge to last. If they're all together, just select them all and merge at center. Oops, not by distance. I meant by center. And just repeat that process. Shift R for the rest of them. Okay. And then we don't need these edges anymore. So if we go in and remove these middle edges, you can see what we're doing here. We're turning that piece into a quad. And if you need to, go in here and just space these out a little bit. Sometimes they get a little cramped. That's okay. This is not a structural edge. So working these vertices a little bit is not going to harm the flow of the model. In fact, it might even improve it. Okay. Lastly, let's take this vert, connect these, and what do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera, et cetera. This is all quads now. Now, if I turn this on, ta-da! Okay. So to wrap this up, as you guessed it, we're going to put an edge loop here. Because there's already one on the inside. So one edge loop is all we need. Grab this, B, 2-segment bevel, make it however you want. These are kind of big on mine, so let's see like that. And voila. Right? There is that piece. And if we look at it in wireframe, it's all quads. Right? Now, I can just mirror this to the other side. I'm in edit mode, just like before. Just symmetrize that over. And that part's done. Now, the same process happens here. It's exactly the same. The only difference, the only difference is that there's a lot more verts to connect, right? Because this was a 32-segment cylinder. This was a 16-segment cylinder, right? But it's exactly the same. So I'm not going to sit here and go through all this in real time. I'm going to speed this up considerably, but it's the exact same thing. So if you want to slow down the video on YouTube, then go ahead, but I'm going to speed this up. Hey guys, back. So just like before, if you followed that, it's exactly the same thing, just with more connections. And I just wanted to comment on one thing. I go into edit mode here. So obviously I had more vertices I needed to connect through the center here instead of just the two. So that's all I did here. And then what you're seeing here is just putting an edge loop through here to connect these two triangles to turn those triangles into quads. Okay. So if you look at this subdivided, it looks like this, right? Everything is quads. Right. Cool. Right. Now that part's done. Right. So the top works exactly the same way. Right? There's only one little difference is that this connects to this the same way. This is going to connect to a cylinder in the same way. So I'm going to speed this part up considerably because it's the exact same thing. Exactly. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this connection in between, and then we'll be done with this section. Okay guys, so here we go. So everything I just did here, if you slowed it down, you would have seen it's the exact same thing we did here and here. There's really nothing different about that. So the reason I stopped here is this connector piece between this hexagon here and this hexagon up here, which is hidden right now, is actually joined by an actual rounded cylinder that's threaded. So what I'm going to do here is select this inside hexagon. It has all these points. Loop tools, once again, circle, and we get this. And I'm just going to check it really quick. That should be fine. And then I'm going to really quickly just bring in, okay, so this is what it's going to connect to. So let's just move this out of the way a little bit. We don't need this for just yet. What we're going to do is create this by just extruding. It looks like it goes up maybe about this tall or so. Okay. And then we're going to give it one inset in here. And we got to tighten this edge here. This is probably more than one piece, right? It's probably like, you know, screwed into here, but instead of separating it out and making a separate piece and doing all that, we're just going to leave it as is. We're never going to see this much of it anyway. I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to scale it a little bit just so it fits within these borders. Okay, so that is that. Now, I realize now that I'm looking at this that you know, this is obviously too rounded. So let's quickly bring in a loop there. Let's take this edge, and we're essentially creating that triple fencing, or that bevel, if you will, to sharpen that edge. Okay, so before we add the threading here, let's just go ahead and get this piece in. So let's bring this. We want it to intersect. Okay, and it's going to be exactly like the other ones. So I'm just going to skip ahead to that. Skip that ahead because it's exactly the same thing as all the other ones. To add the threading here, I'm just going to go into edit mode, grab this section here, and just put a series of loop cuts here. I don't know, that seems good. And then I'm going to bevel these. Like so. And then I'm going to hit Control minus on the numpad to select the inside loop of each one. Shift S2 to put the cursor in the middle. Switch my pivot point to my 3D cursor, and then scale these in, like so. Now we get the illusion that this is threaded. And we can probably go back and just eliminate, yeah, this shouldn't be here, this edge. Get rid of that, get rid of this, that. And let's just make this look a little better. We'll go into here, vertex mode, X-ray mode. Let's grab all of this down to there. Let's just bring this down. Something like that. Okay. And now we have that threaded thing in there, whatever that is. Okay. So on that note, this is done. All the difficult parts of the fire hydrant are now complete. The only thing left to do right now would be to put the bolts around the top and bottom sections here, and then of course the chains if you wanted to add the chains. In the next two sections, I'll go ahead and briefly show how I went about doing that. But I mean, I'm sure you guys have already figured that out, right? Making a bolt is not that big of a deal. The chain thing might be a little bit more complicated, so I'll spend a little bit of time on that. But here it is, right? There's essentially your fire hydrant. All quads, subdivides well, everything looks good, no shading errors, and we're good. All right, guys, so let's jump into the next part. Let's do some bolts really quick. All right, guys, so welcome to the section we're going to cover bolts really quick. Now, bolts, pretty simple. You can make this as detailed or as complex as you want. I'm just going to start by selecting these two faces, Shift S2 to bring the 3D cursor there. Now from here, I'm just going to Shift a six-sided cylinder. That's what I meant to say. Scale it down. Let's move it up a little bit. Let's just get it in position first. So something around there I think works. Let's get it. I think that works. A little bit flatter. Okay. And then set your scale. Okay. Let's make sure that snap to face is on, and let's just snap it to this face right there. Okay. Now, from here, like I said, it's really up to you on how detailed you want to get. You know, bolts, these kind of bolts are rarely ever actually flat across the top. There's always a kind of like a curve in them. But if you didn't want to do any of that, you could just quite simply throw a bevel modifier on this. say, I don't know, 2 or 3 segments, something like this. Shade it smooth. Turn on your auto smooth, and and that's it. You've got a bolt, right? It's really that simple. So we'll just call that a completed bolt number 1. Now, to make the array, there's several tools in Blender, several add-ons that that will do this radial arrays for you. And of course, you could do them in native Blender. Let's just go ahead and make a complete bolt. It'll be easier for us later. So I'm going to take this piece here, and this, if I did a loop tools circle on this, it's not going to make a an actual circle. I'd have to add geometry. Now I could just I can just take all these edges and just subdivide them. I think that would be enough. Just one cut should be enough. Now, if I took this face here, let's say and set it to about, I don't know, there, and then I did loop tools, circle, I'll get an actual circle. Okay. And then from here, I can just bring it down. And if I go back and look, something like this. And for as much as you're going to see of this, that might be all you need to do. It doesn't really need to be super high res or even subdivided, really, unless you needed to. On my model, I did make them out of quads and I subdivided them. But I mean, that's up to you if you wanted to do that. Technically, you can subdivide this. It would just be a little bit of tightening up some edges. And what you would do is you would just take this bottom face, you bring that in a couple times, and then just let's do a poke faces. And just like before, select every other edge and just remove those, and you end up with quads there. And then we can just bring an edge loop down. Actually, we don't need to bring an edge loop. We'll keep that edge loop there. We'll just grab this edge, bevel it. Now, okay, make sure we don't have anything there, and then take this, kind of just do the same thing. Okay, and then for this one, if we were to poke faces on this, I guess it kind of works the same way. We could also just connect these differently, but let's just do this. Poke faces, and then we'll just get rid of these. And then we have quads technically. Okay, so if we were to subdivide this now, we get this. All right. So again, up to you. You can leave it unsubdivided or subdivided, doesn't really matter. All right, guys, for the bottom bolt, let's just go in and just select these faces, Shift S2. And let's just add another 6-sided cylinder to this and scale it down where it's reasonable. I think that looks pretty good. And I'll do the snapping to face thing again. Now, again, for here, you don't need to subdivide this. It's really up to you. You could just do the same thing and just add a bevel modifier to this, say 2 or 3 segments, whatever works. Make sure you apply your scale. Otherwise, that'll look funky. Okay, and then shade this smooth. So if you wanted to do something like that, I mean, that's just as well, right? I mean, that's the faster way to do it. So again, we don't have to subdivide that. This doesn't need to be smooth. And there we go. There's a bolt, right? So from here, what I would do is I want all these to be one thing, right? So I'm just going to isolate these 2 things here. Now, I want to be merged. And sorry, not merged, I mean applied, because I don't want the subd modifier to be applied to this. So the bevel's actually fine, but I'm going to go ahead and just Control A, visual geometry to mesh, which is going to apply all the modifiers. Same thing here. Okay, and then I'm just going to Control J these. So now they're one object, right? It doesn't matter if things are overlapping or whatever. It's a small little part. It doesn't really matter. Okay. They're going to be textured separately. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before using hard ops. Q, mesh tools, radial array, hit C, and then I'm going to scroll till I get to, I don't know, 8 seems reasonable. So there we go. There are my 8 bolts that fast, right? So again, do yourself a favor. If you're not using hard ops or box cutter for that matter, check them out. Obviously, we're not using hard ops and box cutter the way other people are using them with regards to hard surface modeling in here, but a lot of the tools are really, really helpful when you're doing any kind of modeling, whether it's hard surface modeling or subd modeling. I use them every single day, regardless of what I'm working on. So just a little example. Okay, so that is the top level of bolts. Now for the bottom level of bolts, I'm just going to duplicate this. And on that duplicated one, I'll just go ahead and just kill the modifiers right now, bring this down. I need to position it. So it's obviously going to be a little bit sized a little bit differently because obviously this section is bigger, so that's okay. Let's just get this positioned first. I think that works. Okay. So to adjust this, all I need to do is go into edit mode. I'm going to select this piece. Now, the way I selected only that geometry, you guys should probably already know this, but you just hover over that section and hit L. It'll grab everything that's linked. So it'll grab that whole thing. Okay. And I want to move this down, but I can see that I'm going to run out of bolt. So let's quickly just select the bolt part. Oops, the bolt. There we go. And let's go into X-ray mode and let's just grab all of these verts here and let's just bring these down. We can move them again if we need to. And look at that. Look all kinds of the weird craziness that happened here. That's interesting. I have no idea why this happened. Let's just isolate this for a second. I have no idea why this happened, but this is how we're going to fix it. We're going to take these and we're going to hide everything else. I have no idea what happened here, but it goes all the way up the chain. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go into X-ray mode. We're going to go all the way up here to about there. We're just going to get rid of those. Turn off X-ray mode. Let's grab this loop. Loop tools. Where is it? Circle. Here's another little exercise on how to fix shit when it breaks. Okay, let's bring that in like so. And just extrude this down. I'm not sure what happened there, but that's how we fix it. Okay, fixed. Okay, let's bring this down a little bit more. And let's bring up the rest of the model. So now we can go back into here. That's because I hit it. Hang on, I got to bring it back. Okay, and now we can bring this down. We don't want this. We just want this. Okay. Let's look at it from the side. And again, same thing. We're just trying to get this on there like so. And if you want to, I don't really know if it's necessary, but if you want to, just go grab this edge here, give it a wee bevel. And if you really want to get rid of the end gun here, again, it's not really that big of a deal. But if you wanted to, just do the same thing as before. Poke faces. I'm going to fast forward this. Okay, so you fast forward that, but now you can see all we did is just once again remove every other edge, and then we end up with quads. So here we go. Now this is not even subdivided, so it doesn't really matter, but that's just if you wanted to have quads. Let's just put in a. So all I did here is I just added a weighted normal just to tighten that up right there. But again, you're never even going to see those, right? Because the ground is going to be like right here. So this is just a formality. But so just like before, I'm going to grab this, Q, Mesh Tools, Radial Array, hit C. It's already set to 8, and I'm done. Right, there are my bolts. And that's it. So bolts are done. Really simple. Again, you could be as detailed as you want or as complex as you want for the bolts. It really, it's up to you and whatever your project calls for. But I think for most projects, considering you're going to see it from about, I don't know, this far away or further, I think that's fine. All right. And just looking at something here that's just kind of bugging me. This is a little bit too tall. So let's just go into here and let's just bring this down a little bit. Something like there. Okay. Oops. Save your work. All right, guys. So that's it. And the next step, if you want to follow along with the next one, we'll make the chains that connect these caps to an underneath section here that we haven't made yet. But if you look at fire hydrants, a lot of them have a little kind of like circular little thing that pops out on the bottom here, and the chains will usually connect to that thing so they don't lose these caps, right? They take these caps off, they go to the floor, there's like a chain that keeps it on. So if you want to do the chain part, continue on to the next step. Otherwise, this is done. All right, guys. All right, everyone, here we are, the home stretch, the last bit. The fire hydrant's essentially done. But if you wanted to add the chains to it, there's a couple of things we need to do. So the first thing would be to create these kind of clamp things that put the chain onto the caps. And what I did here is just, it's like this really quick. Oops. I just took a curved circle and just dragged the bottom vert straight down, and then put verts in between the side, the left and right and the bottom, and just clamped them together like that. Right, a little bit of tweaking here and there where I needed it, but that's it, right? It's still a curve, hasn't even been converted yet. And I'll usually leave it like this until I'm ready to finish, the whole model, just in case I need to make any adjustments here when the chain is on there. And that's all I did. And then I just mirrored it over the other side, right? Nothing real hard there. Okay, so if you look at your fire hydrant image, chances are there's a little piece under here, that little extrusion thing that the chain connects to. Right, somewhere under in this area here. And in the reference that I have, it looks like it's blended in. So it's not just a piece stuck on there, welded on. And that's probably how they made it. But then once they paint over it, it forms a blend between the two pieces, and it actually is quite soft looking, right? Otherwise, you just stick a cube, flatten it down, stick it on here, put a hole in it, and you're done. But this is a little bit more complicated. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with an inset. And say inset at about, I don't know, this seems about right. And then I'm going to scale it on X, something about there. Okay. Now, again, we're working with cylinders. So there, it's always going to be tricky, to make things line up and fit without changing the continuity of the cylinder. There's just going to be issues. So let's just see what we can do here quickly. I'm going to bridge these edge loops, and I'm going to throw a loop cut right in the middle. And then from the side, I'm just going to drag this down to something like that. Okay. Now I want this to be rounded. So I'm going to give this a 4-segment bevel. Something like that. Okay. And then grab this loop, fill that, grab this side, fill that. Okay, we're going to deal with that in a second. Let's just see what we're kind of looking at here. Okay, so let's start refining this and cleaning it up. So I don't want to connect these across like this. Just in testing, I tried that and it just didn't really work out, the way I would have liked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a support loop here. I'm going to add a support loop here. And then that's going to allow me to connect this point, these two verts here, and connect these two verts here. Do the same on the other side. I can't mirror this because the model at this point is asymmetrical because of those wrench things. I don't want to mess anything up. So I'm going to connect these, and I'm going to make quads there. I'm going to connect these, same thing, 2 quads. Okay, now here, this is obviously not a quad. We want to subdivide this cleanly. So if I just connect this to there, that's a quad. This one isn't. So I have a couple of things that I can do. First of all, I can look at this edge here, and this is an edge that I need. You see, it's connected up here. I can't get rid of this edge. So I need this edge. This is what I just added. So the easy thing to do would just be add another edge loop, right? And this way, when I connect this to there, it just made another quad. It's not pretty, but they're quads, and it'll subdivide well. Okay, so before I do anything, if I just turn this on, see, now this is a mess because we haven't, sharpened it up, but those will actually be fine. So let's grab these faces. We're going to do 2 insets. Inset 1 and inset 2 will be a much bigger inset. Then loop tools, circle. Look at it from the side, scale with Shift X so we don't scale it inward. We're just going to make this hole. And you can rotate it on X if you want, if you think that cleans it up a little bit, whatever you want. And then Control E, bridge edge loops. And now we've got a hole in it, right? And we're still dealing with quads, so it's not the prettiest, but if you wanted to go through here and clean this up and make the geometry, like run this edge here, up to you. It doesn't really matter for this project. This is something you're rarely going to see anyway. I'm just kind of doing it for the sake of doing it. Okay, so now if we look at this, we're getting there. All right, we're almost there. We've got to clean up this edge a little bit, and we've got to sharpen this edge a little bit. So let's figure out some of the best ways we can do that. Now, I think what I'm going to do here is, you see how I have this edge that kind of terminates right here? If I add an edge loop here, we don't want that. So what I want to do is just cut this like so. I'm going to do this on both sides. Let's see if I can get these to line up. I'm going to use an add-on for this, but okay. Now, if I put a support loop here now, and I connect these vertices here, then look in here and get rid of this edge. That looks pretty good. We have to do something about the top there, but you see, if I look at this in Wireframe, right, you don't see any pinching or any weirdness. Can it be a little tighter or cleaner? Probably, but you're not ever going to, it's going to be this far away. But that looks pretty good. And all I did was just continue this edge down to here, so it terminates here, not there. And then this one terminates, actually doesn't terminate, it connects here and keeps going. And if we wanted to, we could take this edge here and I still have to solve this up here. Let's solve this first. Okay, so this one's going here, and this one's going across that way. So what can we do to fix this? So this is one of the things we can do. If we did the same thing we did on the bottom, we just take this edge here, and we just continue it along there. So again, we're just letting this edge flow. We're going to put a support loop here. And then we don't want surface slide. Okay. And then connect here. Connect here. Okay. Then let's go in here and remove this edge, and let's remove this edge here. Okay, so the same thing is happening as the bottom. So this edge is continuing to go that way. And there we go. If we look at this in Wireframe with Subdivision, we can see how it's looking. So pretty good. So we can just call that piece done. Again, man-made items, they're painted, they're going to have flaws in them. So that's just, if anything, that adds to the realism. Right? The geometry is clean. Everything's connected. It's all quads. It's easily subdividable. And we can spend time, introducing edge loops to make this even. We can move these edge loops around as we need to make them more even. I'm not really going to do that right now. That's not the point of this, but you can absolutely do that. Like for example, there's a bunch of edge loops that are all connected, all really close to each other here. Um, you could, select these and literally just move them down, maybe without, as long as you're not, selecting, um, structural edges, that's not going to make a huge difference. And then we can just kind of move these around until they're even, right? We could do that through the whole model. But again, that's not really the point of this. That would just be one of those fine tuning details you would do when you're all done, ready to go. Okay, so we've got our connection points. Let's make a chain. So to make a chain, this is really, I'm sure you could do this a bunch of different ways. This is how I did it. So I'm going to grab Shift A, curve, circle. Let's bring this out so I can see what we're doing here. And then go into Edit, grab, let's just grab these 2 points here, and let's just scale them on Y until we get, that's weird, what's going on here? Make sure there's this, oh, it has median points, so there we go. Okay, get something like this, right? Like that. Looks like it could be a chain link. Okay, and then let's just go ahead and give this some depth, and we'll adjust this because this isn't going to be perfect right out of the gate. From here, I'm going to add a simple deform, leave it on twist, and we'll adjust this too. Like the setting right out of the gate is probably not going to be what we want. And the way we determine that, this is also huge, by the way, this is going to be a big chain link. So let's just bring this down. Something that probably is going to be more reasonable. Something like that. Okay. And okay, so now let's just add an array modifier really quick. And we're going to use relative offset, I think is fine. And let's just get it positioned where it should go. We don't want them to be intersecting. Okay. And then let's make the count for now. We're going to change this as we go, but let's just make it, I don't know, 8 for now so we can just see how this is all working. And then let's take a look. Oops, sorry about that. Got away from me there. Let's take a look at how these are connecting with the twist that we have. I think that's pretty good. So in case you're wondering, I used an angle of 65 degrees on the twist. And that looks pretty good. Now this is also the same thing as the beginning of this model. Because this is still a modular piece, I can still go in and make changes to it. Let's say it links are a little too round. Want them to be more like this. And just make that edit. And we might have to work on this a little bit because we can see here that it intersected a little bit. So let's just make some modifications here. So we'll do a little bit of a modification on the array. And then we might have to either increase the twist or decrease the diameter of the chain link itself. So let's just try increasing the twist. Let's go to 75 degrees, see if that solves that breach, right? Maybe almost. Let's go 85 degrees. Okay. So you see what I'm doing is by increasing the twist angle, I'm correcting that intrusion. Right. And just do this until you're happy with it. Until you're happy with the chain, with each chain, looking the way you want, right? Chain links are always, they always look different. They're always different styles, but just work that until you get it to just the way you want it. And then you'll be ready to go. All right. We're going to leave the chain as is. And then we're going to work on the path that the chain is now going to follow in order to connect from here to there. Okay. Oh, and we also have to make a little S-curve hook thing that's going to go into here. So we'll do that too when we start doing our paths. Okay, so that's it for the chain. Let's start making some paths and another little hook here. Here we go. Last step. Let's make some paths for our chain to follow. We also need to make a little hook here. In fact, let's just do the hook first. we just knock that out. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to come in here and just sake of placement, I'm going to grab the, oops, that's not what I meant to do. Shift S2, put the 3D cursor there, and I'm just going to drop in Shift A, curve, Bezier curve. And let's rotate this on X. Now, this is the super fun and exciting part of just turning this into an S curve. And I'm going to start this process in real time like this, and then I'm going to speed it up because this can sometimes take a while, and there's no point in having you sit there, bored watching me just, finagle points around over and over again until it gets the way I want it. So like I said, I'll just do a couple. I'm going to extrude this to the cursor. Let's see, let's put one there. Let's put one there. Let's put one there. And then let's start messing with these. All right, so you get the idea of what I'm doing here. At this point, it's literally just shaping these points until I get the shape that I want. So I'm going to speed this up from here. Feel free to slow it down if you need, but I don't really think that's necessary. It just, you guys should get the idea from here. This is all I'm doing. All right. So once you believe you have your shape, but of course you can edit it. Let's just go in here and we'll give it a depth. Say something that looks, whatever looks good to you. This little S hook thing. And again, we don't have to commit this, so we can just keep it like that for now, and then we can edit it if we need, when we get there. Just like these curves here, right? You can still edit those. So that's why I don't commit those until the very last minute. I just keep them as curves in case I need to make any changes. Okay, so let's call that one done for now, at least. Now let's make the curve that's going to connect our chain from here to here. So I'm going to do the same thing. Let's just bring in, move my 3D cursor over there, and let's just bring in a curve, Bezier. Let's rotate this on X again. And then we're just going to do the same thing. And this is a little bit more tricky, but it's the same idea. So again, I'm going to start this kind of slow, and then I'm going to speed it up because it's rather boring. What I want to do is basically just create a path that's going to connect the first point of where I want my chain to be to the last point of where I want my chain to be. Okay. Let's say you're happy with that. And again, this can still be edited. That looks pretty good. So what I want to do, in fact, I'm not going to do this so I can demonstrate this. I'm going to take my chain here. And all we have are these two modifiers, and I'm going to add that curve modifier like we did before. And select this curve, and it's going to get all kinds of funky, right? So if I go into my curve and I Control A and I set all transformations, it still didn't work. So let's grab our chain, set the rotation to scale. Yeah, in fact, let's just do this for a second. Hold on, let's put this back where it was. Okay, turn this back on. There we go. Because I had moved the chain off its axis where it was supposed to be initially, it wasn't lining up correctly. But anyway, just set that back to where it was originally, and we're good. And so let's just go in here really quick to start making some adjustments. Now what we're going to be doing here is adjusting the curve. So select the curve, go into edit mode, and don't worry about this twist yet. We're gonna work on that. Let's just get everything kind of where it needs to be. Now go back into the chain and just start adding more numbers to your array until this connects on the other end. Too much. Ah, okay. Well, Yeah, we'll keep it like that. And we'll just move that point. So we'll go back into the path, edit, and just move that up to where it needs to go. And again, you have to edit it, go in there and just kind of mess with it a little bit. And then we can see there's, we need to apply some twist here. And this hook might also be a little too thick. Now that we see it with the chain, that might be a little too thick. So we can just go back and just bring that down a little bit. Be something like this. Okay. So from here, it's just a matter of positioning until you get everything the way you want it. Right. It's just a lot of just a little bit of push and pull, etc. Now for this, right, our chain needs to be turned a little bit. So an easy way I found that works well for doing that is just go into the tilt and then just literally grab this and tilt it until it gets to, you're just tilting that one point until it gets to the angle that works. And then again, you may have to go back and forth a couple times. And keep in mind, this is going to be smoother too when it's subdivided. Okay. And then look here, make sure that this is not intersecting, like the metal isn't intersecting. See, like it is right here. All right. So we'll do the same thing. We'll grab this, go into edit, and let's grab the tilt again. Let's see if we can just tilt this. Not that much, not that much. Ah, it's very sensitive here. Okay. So that seems good. And then again, just adjust until it gets to a point where, there we go. Okay. And you can go through, let's say you went here and you grab that tilt again, and we can tilt the chain as much as we want. Again, you may have to just go through it a couple times as you make adjustments, but I mean, there it is. I'm going to put my cursor back to its original origin, and there it is, right? And again, you can keep playing with it. If it's, if it's not flowing right, keep messing with it until it gets to where you want it. But that's essentially it. I mean, that's how I made the chains. And, based on your reference photos, maybe you'll have all three, maybe you have two, maybe just one, just do whatever you want to do. But that's pretty much it. And then when I'm ready to texture the model, I'll go through here. For example, if I took this one, and like I said, it's still a path or a curve, I can just kill the mirror modifier and then just go to convert that to mesh, and then I can just apply a sub D to that, and then now it's nice and smooth, right? And then just mirror it again. So again, using hard ops, right? And then I would do the same thing with the chain, right? Once I was happy with exactly how it was positioned, I would just go into the, to the initial curve, convert that, add a sub D if I needed it. This one might not even need it. The resolution is high enough, but which is also something you can consider, adjusting resolution, especially if this is going to be really small and you're not going to see it. Maybe best to not have a high resolution chain, but that's the decision you get to make based on, what you need it to do. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's how I did it. Let me know what you guys do. If you want, if you're in the Discord, feel free to, show me what you made. It'd be cool to see. I hope you learned something. Hope you had a great time. Again, just like I said in the beginning, if you like what I'm doing and you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. It helps the channel, helps me with my motivation to put in the time to make these videos. And it's just really cool. Like the videos, that's also awesome. Comment on the videos, also equally awesome. And I'll keep trying to make them. All right, guys. Until the next one.